China's agriculture is already suffering from floods and drought, and now China's southern provinces are facing their worst locust plague in decades. Massive protests broke out over the weekend in Inner Mongolia. This after a leaked secret order from Beijing, which some are calling a cultural genocide. A high-profile Australian TV anchor, Cheng Lei, detained in Beijing. She's long appeared on business programs for China's state-run English news channel CGTN. The news adding fuel to already tense Australia-China relations. China is hoping to get rid of its reliance on Western technology for high-end chips. With one key company coming to a halt, that dream is now hitting a major roadblock. And the Czech Republic's second highest official is in Taiwan on a 6-day visit against the will of China. The Czech official called on Taiwan to defend its freedom and said democratic countries should support each other. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Massive protests broke out in the Chinese autonomous region of Inner Mongolia over the weekend. It was against a move by Beijing that some consider to be a new round of cultural genocide. Local Mongolians in Inner Mongolia never call themselves Chinese but Mongolian. They've remained steadfast in their resistance against Beijing's communist regime for decades. And their fight reached a peak over the weekend. People there call their land Southern Mongolia. The protests began after a secret order from Beijing was leaked. It dictated that in all schools, teaching in the Mongolian language would be replaced with using the Chinese language, starting from this September. The U.S.-based Southern Mongolia Human Rights Information Center called this a new round of cultural genocide. From students to teachers, from villages to businessmen, from intellectuals to some government officials and celebrities, people from all walks of life of Southern Mongolia are standing up in an unprecedented level of solidarity. Local authorities are pushing for an early start to the semester, but parents and students across Southern Mongolia are joining the massive school boycott. Schools and classrooms are almost empty. There were students who came to schools, but only to protest. These students are crying, "Our mother tongue is Mongolian. Until death, we are Mongolian." Teacher strikes are also widespread. Ignoring threats from the school authorities that they will lose their jobs, all Mongolian teachers in Shilingola League have gone on strike. Many parents are proposing to homeschool instead of sending their children to Chinese schools. Some retired teachers and even college students are volunteering to teach all subjects in Mongolian. Besides group protests and rallies, signature collection campaigns and solo protests in video, audio, and written format are going viral on social media. Mongolian lawyers are providing guidance online to defend the rights of Mongolian people, with the possibility of filing lawsuits against the new policy. Mongolian people are famous for their singing and dancing. During the protests, certain songs were popular. Citizens gathered together to sing "Let Us Mongolians Be Who We Are." At a concert, singers together with the audience were singing "My Mother Tongue is Mongolian." Videos went viral showing hundreds of herders and thousands of students in traditional Mongolian clothes gathered in separate places, singing "My Mongolia, Step Mongolia." A video shows a little girl crying on the floor. "I don't want to become Chinese. I don't want to learn Chinese." In another short video, a young Mongolian man shows a mock example of how to deal with a school by having their children take sick leave. He pretended to talk to the teacher, saying, "I am not sure when my child will recover, but I expect he will be fine by the time bilingual education is canceled." As the protest gathers momentum, the authorities are intensifying their crackdown. Hundreds of angry parents gathered in front of a school, demanding the school release their children. They had sent their children back to school a day ago without knowing about the new policy. Hundreds of riot police poured to the scene, preventing the parents from accessing the school dormitories. After a standoff lasting hours, parents finally broke through the police barricade and proceeded to collect their children. Students were running out to meet their parents. At another protest, Mongolian parents were met with force by the police. Several parents were beaten and taken into police vehicles. 2 leaders of the protests were taken away. Another 2 were put under house arrest. In another school, a student fell out of a school building and died from the fall. The cause of the accident is so far unknown. A video showing Mongolian schoolgirls protesting triggered a strong reaction online. Some Chinese also expressed their support. One of them wrote, "They didn't kneel down. They deserve to be a descendant of Genghis Khan." Mongolian students are protesting against the cancellation of Mongolian language teaching by the communist bandits. Please support them. China aspires to produce 70% of its semiconductors, or chips, by 2025. But it is now suffering a major setback. NTD's Juliet Song reports.
A Chinese chip maker, thought to lead the country's breakthroughs in high-end chip development, is now on the verge of collapse. Known as HSMC, a local report says the company has come to a halt because of funding problems. It marks a major setback in China's technology climb. Semiconductors, or chips, are at the heart of the world's tech race. They're the brains of electronic devices. Without them, today's smartphones and computers wouldn't be possible. Countries that dominate chip technology have political advantages over others. But compared to the world's best, China's chip manufacturing capabilities are still generations behind. TSMC, the world's biggest chip company, can mass-produce chips as tiny as 5 nanometers wide. China's strongest competitor can only manage 14 nanometers. As a result, China is heavily reliant on imports when it comes to high-end chips. It's the world's largest chip importer, bringing in more than $300 billion worth of chips last year. In recent years, Beijing has doubled down on its efforts to become self-reliant in technology production. The regime has poured tens of billions of dollars into the industry, attempting to build up its own cutting-edge chip manufacturers. HSMC is part of that effort, but is now stalled. Another leading company, SMIC, also remains unable to make the jump. HSMC's potential collapse could also be a blow to Chinese telecoms giant Huawei, which is running out of chips amid strict U.S. sanctions. Huawei needs 7-nanometer chips for its high-end smartphones, but no Chinese factories can mass-produce them. In the meantime, the U.S. is cutting off Huawei's chip supply. The Trump administration imposed sanctions, preventing manufacturers from selling any chips made with U.S. technology to Huawei. Huawei could find a way out of the jam if Chinese chip makers manage a major production breakthrough. But with HSMC on the verge of collapse, it seems unlikely. Juliet Song, NTD News.
China's southern provinces are facing their worst locust plague in decades. According to the South China Morning Post, a swarm of yellow-ridged bamboo locusts crossed the border from Laos into Yunnan province in June. They've since been gradually moving northward. As of mid-August, over 26,000 acres have been affected in the province. Yunnan's provincial government has sent tens of thousands of investigators to explore the situation in rural areas and forests. Investigators say the highly mobile locust swarms are difficult to control in the mountains. Amid what's considered the worst storm in decades, China's agriculture has also been suffering from both severe flooding and drought. Now we turn to another kind of disaster. A restaurant in a northern Chinese village collapsed during a local resident's 80th birthday celebration, leaving 29 people dead. On Saturday, the roof of a restaurant in Linfeng City inside Shanxi province collapsed. 29 people who attended the party died, while another 30 were injured. It wasn't immediately clear what caused the collapse. Locals explained that a decade ago, the building where the roof collapsed used to be a yard. They said the restaurant built a roof above it, turning the space into a banquet hall. But they explained that professionals weren't brought in to design or construct the roof. Instead, the restaurant owners built it themselves. The Czech Republic's second highest ranking official is in Taiwan to promote ties between the two countries. He said that his country will not be deterred by objections from the Chinese Communist Party.
Freedom, truth, and justice. These are your best swords, also your best armor.
Addressing Taiwan's National Chengchi University today, Czech President of the Senate called on Taiwan to defend its freedom and democracy. He said that democratic countries should support each other. The Czech delegate is the second highest ranking official in the Czech Republic and also the most senior one to visit the self-ruled island of Taiwan. The move has drawn the ire of the Chinese regime. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said that the Czech official will pay a heavy price for his trip to Taiwan. Czech Deputy Minister summoned the Chinese ambassador in Czech over the comment, with the Czech Foreign Minister saying it has gone too far. Wang was in Europe during the past week, countering growing discontent over China's role in the pandemic and its human rights abuses. In his speech, the Czech official recounted Czechia's history of being betrayed by European countries in the 1938 Munich Agreement. At the time, the UK and France allowed Hitler's invasion of what was Czechoslovakia in order to avoid a war with the Nazis. Yet the Czech official said the appeasement did not bring peace to Europe and eventually dragged the world into World War II. He said the world should have learned from history.
Please believe that we in Czech understand what it means to the Taiwanese people to have the big brother always behind your back. For our shared experience, we understand you and we stand together with you.
Czechia and Taiwan signed 3 memorandums where the two states will cooperate on artificial intelligence, medicine, and more. When asked about Czechia's role in China's Belt and Road Initiative, he instead recommended more cooperations between Czech and Taiwanese businesses.
We help you open the doors of Europe, and you can help us open the door of Asia. This is mutually beneficial.
The Czech official is accompanied by a delegation of 89 people, which includes business leaders, lawmakers, and the mayor of Prague, who stopped his city's sister city agreement with Beijing and started one with Taiwan's capital Taipei, despite backlash from China. The group is scheduled to meet with Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen on Thursday. The visit fulfilled a promise by the former Czech Senate president. The official died earlier this year, and his widow accused Czechia's pro-Beijing president and the local Chinese embassy of being responsible for his death. The widow said 3 days before Kuber's death, he was invited to the Chinese embassy for dinner, after which the official's health deteriorated quickly. The widow also found 2 letters among Kuber's belongings, one from the Czech president, the other from the Chinese embassy. Both threatened him not to visit Taiwan. The official's death caused a backlash in the Czech Republic against China. The Czech Senate voted 50-1 in May in favor of his successor's diplomatic visit to Taiwan. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
Now we look to America's commitment to Taiwan and its efforts to help the island steer clear of coercion from mainland China. The U.S. released Reagan-era diplomatic cables, messages between an embassy and the foreign ministry of its parent country, on Monday. That's according to Bloomberg. The cables were published by the American Institute in Taiwan, which effectively serves as a U.S. embassy. The message explains that the U.S. will increase its weapons sales to the island if the Chinese Communist regime increases its aggression. The statement was released shortly after a U.S. Navy vessel sailed through the Taiwan Strait. Now we turn to another facet of U.S.-China relations, this time involving the skies over Taiwan. According to a Beijing University Twitter account called SCS Probing Initiative, a U.S. Navy aircraft appeared to take off from somewhere in Taiwan and flew to Japan. But the Twitter account added that the information could be inaccurate. The Global Times, one of Chinese Communist Party or CCP's media mouthpieces, also published an article titled "A Fundamental Warning Needs to be Given to Tsai Ing-wen's Administration." The article said if Beijing were to find conclusive evidence about U.S. aircraft landing in Taiwan, China would destroy the airport involved and any U.S. military aircraft present there. It added that a war over the Taiwan Strait would then begin. Taiwan denied the U.S. takeoff. It responded by saying that kind of false information from mainland China seriously undermines regional security and stability between China and Taiwan. Ever since U.S.-China relations were strengthened decades ago, the U.S. has recognized Taiwan as part of China. As a result, Beijing insists that the U.S. should ask China for permission if an American military aircraft needs to make an emergency landing in Taiwan. Landing in Taiwan without Beijing's permission would be considered crossing the line. Despite Beijing's demands, the U.S. says it won't submit. U.S. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien said on Friday that the United States is not going to back down. He was referring to asserting America's right to the freedoms of navigation and flight and use of space in the face of China's increasing assertiveness and aggressiveness over the waters surrounding South and East Asia.
They're bullying the Republic of China, Taiwan. They're bullying.
In his speech, he used Taiwan's official name, the Republic of China. It's a rare move for top U.S. officials who have rarely used the formal name publicly in decades. Now we look to India-China relations. India's Ministry of Defense issued a statement on Monday regarding a weekend scuffle between Indian and Chinese soldiers at the highly contested border. The statement said China's army violated the previous consensus arrived at during military and diplomatic engagements during the ongoing standoff in eastern Ladakh. It added the actions were provocative military movements to change the status quo. The statement said the Indian Army took measures to strengthen its position and thwart the Chinese Army's intention to unilaterally change facts on the ground at the lake's southern bank. The lake it refers to is situated at over 14,000 feet in the Himalayas. 1/3 lies in India, while 2/3 are in China. China's foreign ministry has since issued a statement denying the transgressions. And a new report says the Indian Navy deployed a warship to the South China Sea following the June 15th border clash with Chinese soldiers. Sources told South Asia news agency ANI that the action was taken immediately after the conflict left 20 Indian soldiers dead. China complained about the warship's presence. Beijing has been increasing its drills in the South China Sea, having claimed the area as its own. But 5 other governments have also staked claims. At the same time India deployed its warship, the U.S. Navy sent over destroyers and frigates. They kept in constant communication with the Indian side. India's Navy also deployed frontline vessels in the Indian Ocean, tracking any activity from the Chinese side to protect its national interests. Sources added the Indian Navy also deployed its MiG-29K fighter jet at an important Air Force base, where it's currently conducting drills. The Indian Navy reportedly plans to obtain 10 naval UAVs or unmanned aerial vehicles. The number of Chinese casualties from the border clash in mid-June is still a mystery, but a viral post might shed some light. The post shows a tombstone identifying a Chinese soldier who died in that clash. It first appeared on Weibo and then was widely circulated in India. The tombstone reads, "Soldier of the 69316 troops from Pingnan, Fujian, tomb of Chen Xiangrong. He was sacrificed in the struggle against India's border troops in June 2020 and was posthumously remembered by the Central Military Commission." Many online speculated the post is proof of PLA losses in the clash. 2 Weibo accounts posted the picture in a military forum. They were taken down after numerous requests for the source. The Chinese regime has yet to issue a response. Shares of TikTok's potential buyers, Microsoft, Oracle, and Walmart, all fell today. A likely result after China's move to restrict certain technology exports brought concerns that Beijing may block any deal to sell the video app.
New rules in China over certain technology exports may mean selling TikTok in the U.S. could need approval from Beijing. This, according to commentary in state media with a Chinese trade expert after the rules were released last Friday. Trump advisor Peter Navarro says China's restriction of this type of tech export is ironic, considering much of China's AI technology came from Google and Microsoft.
So we have, again, a typical situation where China, the forced technology transfer, grabs it from us, and now they're restricting it. So there is some irony there.
Business professor Frank Xie says China is probably trying to delay the sale until after the November election.
China is trying to probably to postpone this purchase or to delay this negotiation as much as they can.
He says Chinese officials want to make some profits from the sale.
At least Chinese elite, high-level officials, they want to take cut from the sales as well.
Friday's rule change on tech exports was the first time the Chinese regime revised those controls in over a decade. They restrict the export of artificial intelligence technology. It seems to include the algorithm TikTok uses to recommend the next video to watch. It means TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance would have to obtain a license to export any restricted technologies to a foreign company. President Trump has ordered TikTok's parent company ByteDance to sell off its U.S. operations. The White House says it's a matter of national security.
Chinese tech giant Huawei is terminating its sponsorship of an Australian sport team after the country's 5G ban squashed its business. This also comes amid rising tensions between Australia and China as Canberra tries to counter the Chinese regime's influence in the country.
Chinese telecom giant Huawei says it will end its sponsorship contract with an Australian rugby team a year early due to a downturn in business.
Because of the business environment here in Australia, I've had to unfortunately say to the Canberra Raiders that we will have to cease being the major sponsor at the end of this year.
Canberra is trying to reduce Beijing's influence over issues including security and trade. Relations with the Chinese regime and Australia have become increasingly strained.
The impact on the 5G ban and the greater Australia-China relationship has had a huge flow-on effect.
In 2018, Australia was the first country to effectively ban Huawei from its 5G network on national security grounds. Mitchell says the ban has had a major economic impact.
Where we had hoped our business to pick up outside of the 5G hasn't happened. The reality is, we've gone from 1,000 staff. Next year will be 100 staff.
The country's relations with the Chinese regime have deteriorated since the ban and have reached a low point during the pandemic. Neither Huawei nor the Canberra Raiders have disclosed the value of the sponsorship.
And another development fueling tensions between China and Australia. China has launched an anti-subsidy probe into Australian wines in containers holding half a gallon or less. The investigations will be looking into mostly high-quality wines because most standard wines are shipped in containers larger than half a gallon. China says its domestic wine industry requested the investigation. Currently, the Australian government buys water to improve some of its key waterways. In turn, some of the water is used to make wine. Australia's trade minister refutes to claim it's a subsidy for wine production and that their research and development programs don't equate to a subsidy either. A high-profile Australian TV anchor for Chinese state-run English news channel CGTN has been detained in Beijing. The news has added fuel to already tense Australia-China relations. Australian authorities say China formally alerted them to her detention in mid-August. 2 weeks later, Australian diplomats were permitted to speak to her via video conference. China's reasons for detaining her have not been released. Chen has been working for CGTN for 8 years. The station is the English version of the Chinese Communist Party's main media mouthpiece, CCTV. Chen's profile page has since been removed from CGTN's website, as were videos featuring her stories. Chen has not been charged. She's being held under a kind of detention called residential surveillance at a designated location. During this time, investigators can cut off a suspect from the outside world, including from lawyers, and question him or her for up to 6 months. All before the suspect has been formally arrested. And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.